Hello, I'm Gus, and this is my little studio here. Basically, today I'm hoping to talk about specific artist inspiration of mine. I've obviously been working in my studio the last couple of weeks on and off. I do various other things here where I work in London. Yeah, I've been starting to do little talks at a local group. There's a young adults group connected to the Rosary Shrine up in near Hampstead. It's a Catholic young adults group, and I'd like to talk about different artist inspirations. And a big one for me is Rodney Matthews, who is the main fella I hope to just have a little chat about today. And yeah, just try out these new YouTube adventures, trying out different formats and stuff, because obviously I do a lot of animation stuff, but in recent years. But yeah, looking to play around with the formats here available at a YouTube. So yeah, I thought I'd talk about Rodney Matthews and show a bit of his art, a little bit, obviously, and then play on from there. So yes, if I can get this working here, I can get this screen showing other things, that would be good. Cool. So yes, so here's Rodney himself at the old Forbidden Planet store in London, which is actually sort of I think from what I gather, it's just a stone's throw away from where the modern one is. Yeah, okay, that's working. Cool. So yes, Rodney Matthews is a illustrator, obviously known for his album covers. He does a lot of fantasy art, which is where it relates to me, because I love a good bit of fantasy art, and obviously a really big fan of the Tolkienian works, and obviously a bit of C.S. Lewis is a bit of fun as well. The classics, you know, in science fiction and fantasy. Now I'll talk a bit about his background. Rodney was born in 1945 in Somerset. As a kid, he liked drawing magpies and snakes, frogs, and toads. I'm just reading from his biography here. He went to university in Bristol, which is obviously where these days, for me as an animator, it's quite interesting because that's where Aardman is based. And it's obviously interesting that you see the such sort of almost crazy punk and heavy metal kind of history in Bristol, and yet you also have that juxtaposed with Nick Park's Wallace and Gromit kind of very tender, bright-eyed children's animation there, which is interesting. Yes, his dad was an engineer, and let's have a look at what else. Yes, he went freelance into the world of art in the 1970s. He also had his own band. He worked for Big O Posters in London for a while. Obviously, London was known for, they produced a lot of album covers in various different studios in London. Obviously, I forget the name of there was one. I forget the name of it, but obviously he did a lot of the Pink Floyd, known for a lot of the Pink Floyd stuff. London and Britain in general had a big boom in sort of obviously a lot of metal and heavy rock. I'm not a crazy rock fan myself, but you know I can appreciate a bit here and there. I'm quite like varied my interest in music and sound. So yes, carrying on from there, obviously Rodney Matthews is also known as a conceptual designer for games. He worked on the logo for Traveller's Tales. So if you remember the old Lego games, they had this Traveller's Tales logo. If I can find it in a second, I'll speed to it. Here we go. Traveller's Tales. There we go. So there's the Traveller's Tales logo. You can see it right there. Very nice. He also helped do a lot of the concepts and design work for the Lavender Castle TV show, which was back in the 90s. I'm not sure there's any photos here I've got of it. I probably have it down here. Here we go. Lavender Castle. Yes, that was a show in the 90s. Here we go. Some photos here and here of Rodney's work on Lavender Castle. So what I like about a lot of Rodney's stuff is, as you can see here, there's McKinnon and Saunders, the the puppet makers up in Manchester apparently produce a lot of these puppets. I'm not surprised because they're very good with see silicons. This is probably foam latex, painted foam latex. This is me getting into the animation side of things. This is Rodney. They're a younger Rodney. So that's interesting as well. So obviously today I'm talking a little bit about obviously his conceptual art, but also obviously his background. He's a known, at least as far as I'm aware, still is a Christian, and obviously myself as a Catholic, it's and a Christian. Not to trigger any Christians there, but yes, I find that really interesting how he combines both his faith and imbues it into his art. So you can see in this piece of artwork here, this is In Search of Forever. And I should start with, initially he was a very hardcore sort of atheist type back in the day. If I can just find this photo here. There we go. So he obviously produced varied posters on various themes. You can see here just a selection of some of them. Yeah, so he was back in the day, from his own, what he talks about when he was in the sort of traveling around back in the old early days of heavy metal, all the rest of it. He was kind of a bit quite brutal, really. Sort of. So hold on a second, I'm getting this right. He came from a stock of the classic brutal sort of atheistic types who would make fun of Christians and all the rest of it, and yeah, there's an event where he apparently, this is from what I've heard him say at various places online. I mean, his views may have changed, I don't know, but there was an explosion, IRA explosion outside of his studio on Bristol. There's a big park street, and there's an explosion next to his studio. Basically, it kind of made him reevaluate things a bit, and he became much more of a well, he went from being sort of an atheist type to being quite solid Christian, and you can see that reflected in his work. And it's amazing when you see his like really grungy, gritty work, which I quite enjoy this stuff as well. The really kind of sort of classic heavy metal fun. I mean, this is quite fun. All this stuff, orcs and goblins, they're quite fun to draw and they're quite fun to look at. But apparently, while he was painting, this one here, Search Forever, that was the one he was working on when the bomb exploded outside of his studio, and he sort of had a reevaluation on things, and yeah, he kind of imbued his future work with strong Christian elements. So that's something you don't see all the time, but obviously with likes of Tolkien, it's quite visible. C.S. Lewis is another one who's quite a staunch atheist, quite solid and solid in his views as well, because apparently Lewis was in the sort of battle of World War One, and he would be watching his fellow, his friends in arms, sort of all who was said they were atheists, suddenly kind of, chickening out and praying on the battlefield, and he was like, "What's going on? You said one thing, and now you're doing another." And he was always resolute to follow the truth. It seems to be wherever it leads, and he's like, "Look, these guys they're quite wimpy, and I'm not going to break down on my views, And obviously, he met Tolkien and a few others of, I think, the Inklings back in the day. This is back in the day, being probably 1930s, 40s. And obviously, he had a conversion to Christianity and had some, really interesting stories. Often I find converts, when they change views, they're stronger in their faith because they understand where they're coming from. It's not just a case of just doing what they're told. It's actually having a deeper rooted understanding of Christianity, which is really great to see in their work. It's really emboldens their stuff. So this is what he was working on. Now, obviously, you can see it's like a bridge between sort of this giant chasm. I've since found my own work very inspired by his work, and that I've also find myself using bridges and stuff in my work. If I can just skip around here. Here we go. That's obviously not going to respond to me. This is one of his later works. This is at Sanctuary, I think. And yeah, you can see still here, it's almost like the Kingdom of Heaven. There's like a bridge leading to it. This is apparently inspired off of, I heard it was inspired off of the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which is in Bristol. It's a beautiful bridge. It's a Brunel bridge. Another Brunel bridge I love is London Bridge, which actually isn't too far from where I live, actually, the Brunel Bridge, the Tower Bridge, sorry. And yeah, apparently with his work, he said as well, he uses airbrush, just get technical. I'm sort of darting about with what I'm talking about here, but he uses airbrush for the backgrounds, and he'll do acrylic inks for the foreground elements, and you can sort of see the differences there. It's one of my favorite arts of his, that one there. You can see in my work as well. Let's have a look. Troll of London Bridge, bits and bobs. Troll. This is a better one. So yeah, obviously I did my own animation with directly relating to the Tower Bridge. That was just last year, and obviously that's, you can see the inspiration I took maybe a bit from Rodney's work in my own animation. Here we can see, click on that. Yeah, so you can see a bit here and there of sort of, I suppose, the inspiration of Rodney in my own work. Little goblins, monsters, and they're really fun to make as well. And that kind of colors and layout. Obviously, I have a background in Games Workshop, which is not exact same as a background in music and heavy metal, but it's similar. Games Workshop, we'd often play heavy metal, and there'd be a lot of, back in my day in the 2000s, of Linkin Park and those kind of guys. But obviously the world of metal is a funny old world where you got all sorts going on. I remember back in my acting days, you get all sorts. What's so and so doing over there, and you'd go to a party and there'd be people in the corner messing about with various substances, and you'd be like, might need to leave now. I think it's getting too late in the evening. You get a taxi early. Oh yes. So that's that. If I can skip around, it's not responding very well, is it? Here we go. So yeah, you can see some of his other works. Again, he likes the tower. You can see there. There's sort of towers in his work. Let's have a look. He's working currently on various projects. Was it Trinity was one of them? If I can find it. I'm literally just going to be speeding through his work. This is what's it called? Sunrise. Obviously, this is like probably one of his most overtly Christian images. But I really like the fantastical elements imbued in it. And you got these like the leaves points. I mean, I think he said he loved insects and growing up and drawing insects. There's another one. This is I forget what it was called, but it was connected to the rock. On this rock I will build my church. And this is it SS Pride, the ship that's sinking. You see the metaphor for our times, the pride, sinking of pride, and obviously the rock that holds on. And you kind of get lost at sea. But look at those waves, aren't they glorious? Lovely little waves here. And I'm not sure, I'm tempted to say that even likes of Peter Jackson was inspired by images such as this, where you saw, I think is it Minas Morgul in Return of the King, there's like a beam of light, and I always got a bit miffed. I remember watching it as a kid going, really, that's like a symbolism of almost like the God ray coming down. But I suppose for Minas Morgul it was sort of beaming upwards like a Tower of Babel in a way. So obviously I suppose more Tower of Babel would be Tower of Barad-dûr, but yeah, look, this is just brilliant. This just is right. I'd love to see this kind of artwork being produced into a film. You see likes of Lord of the Rings did with Alan Lee's work. I think there's an equivalent for this work, a very kind of much more spiritual. I mean, Lord of the Rings is already very spiritual, very Catholic, very Christian, but if you could take even one step further and see what you could do with this stuff, I'd be excited to see what you could do with that stuff. This is another one he did back in 1983, I think, and I'm not sure if Blade Runner came out recently, with what one inspired the other, but obviously you have it's called Be Watchful, and obviously you got the face of Christ. This just looks like Shroud of Turin. There you got like a cross figure in the mechanics of the the architecture and such. This character is on his guitar and he's not really paying much attention. I relate to this fella here probably. And obviously you got these sort of smokestacks, little pot smokestacks, which always makes me think a bit of Stoke-on-Trent. I went to uni in Stoke-on-Trent and had a rich history in pottery, and obviously the industrial revolution obviously hit Birmingham, which was obviously nearby, and a lot of the world of the arts changed a bit from obviously more arts and crafts, which it was around Birmingham, to more factory workers, and that in turn sort of spawned the such of in the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien talking about how the hobbits were all in the scouring of the Shire forced to work, almost in fact, I think in factories, or it was basically he was doing a little metaphor for, maybe not a direct metaphor, but there's a connection between that and his background watching Birmingham sort of change culturally in the early 20th century. And and the loss of innocence there to a degree, which is sad, but there you go. And it's also interesting that, like in Birmingham, when all the arts and crafts kind of subsided a bit and they kind of got pushed into the factories, all the people got pushed in, working into the factories, that you had likes of, is it the likes of those musicians, and a lot of the rock musicians in Birmingham who sprung up, like the likes of Ozzy Osbourne and the Black Sabbath people. The people worked there, did the music with them. They their parents were, from what I gather, their dads were all kind of involved in the factories in Birmingham. So you can almost see the scouring of the Shire, like the hobbits being pushed into the mills and stuff. And then, then you have like the Black Sabbath, like really almost Luciferian stuff coming out of that in a way. Make of that what you will. I'm not sure people's backgrounds and what their inner beliefs are, but there's some dark stuff obviously in the likes of rock, the world of rock and art. So but Rodney kind of traverses like a bridge, doesn't he? He traverses like a bridge from the darker stuff and moves it to the light. And in some ways, I think I remember watching a lot of Jonathan Brajau's work on YouTube, and he's like kind of talks about Christian Catholic symbolism and symbology, and yeah, there's a talk he was mentioning, I think, about how, was it Cain? Was it got Cain and Abel? Cain was the one who killed Abel, but almost like the arts came from Cain's offspring, all the creatives. So it's like the darkest of the dark, create music to kind of bridge the gap between the inner light of, you could say, God and the outer edges of reality. Fills up the whole world in a way, like a blanket or something. He words it better than me, but I just think that some of their stuff's interesting. I mean, I'm talking about this stuff on my channel, but I mean, obviously I talk about technical stuff, but I'm looking at talking some about more spiritual stuff as well. Kind of, you can see where you want to go in your artwork and what your images you're creating, what you want them to mean, and what they should mean. Just think about what they should mean. This is one of his classic works, On a Storyteller's Night, which is one of his big ones that got him famous. He did a lot of work with Magnum. I mean, a lot of these images I'm showing, like this one didn't originally, I think, in the official work, it had the title. It didn't have the face of Christ there, but he manages to, well, at least during the 80s and 90s, sneak in, obviously, Catholic, Christian iconography. I'm not sure he'd be happy if I say Catholic, but he's a Christian. I don't think he's a Catholic, but maybe one day. Hey, Rodney, maybe one day. So yes, this stuff's really great, sort of reminiscent of the Bree Tavern in Lord of the Rings. Although you can't claim Tolkien doesn't claim rights to every single fantasy tavern, but yeah, obviously a bit of, maybe you could say, a bit of Terry Pratchett. I've never read any Terry Pratchett, but yeah, I myself, in my own work, I quite like the wooden textures. Always fun to paint. They're very homely kind of colorings. Although I would probably add a bit more, maybe blue or something, other colors. But look, who am I to say? I mean, this is Rodney was shot up to high fame from these kind of artworks. So yeah, this is another one. Super duper, super duper Christian. This one, again, I really love this one as a kid, because I had a lot of it. I had his art book as a kid. Just these monsters and these angels here, guardian angels, you could say, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I think this is a King Arthur one. Again, like really kind of Games Workshop. I'm not sure even inspired. Maybe they were inspired off of him, or vice versa, or it all kind of came at the similar time. All this stuff. I mean, Games Workshop definitely loves their little points on all their cloaks and such. So it'd be interesting to see where the Games Workshop was, because they kind of came. Yeah, I think they were 70s, bit of 80s. I mean, I think they were 80s actually. So maybe they were inspired off of him. I suspect so, to be fair, or at least the concept artists for Games Workshop's first stuff were kind of, they were citing, Rodney Matthews up in Nottingham. I mean, obviously Games Workshop's in Nottingham. Rodney kind of worked a bit in obviously Bristol, London, and obviously I think he lives now, or used to live, up in Snowdonia area, kind of Wales. Obviously Wales, because it's got beautiful natural environments. Obviously this is one of my favorite. I love this one. Great. And yeah, this is some of his more recent stuff with Magnum. And obviously playing on, I mean, there's some American stories. Obviously that's I forget his name, but obviously the Wizard of Oz author is of some of his characters. But you obviously have a lot of Alice in Wonderland stuff. I know Rodney's sold some of his paintings to John Cleese and some of it was it Terry Jones, was it? Some of the Monty Pythons back in the 80s. Um, and I think he might be doing various collaboration or something with John Cleese or something. I don't know, but yeah, you see some various characters. A lot of it's from British stories, but I almost kind of wish that was only British stories because you've got Robin Hood. You've almost got like it looks like almost a Sherlock Holmes character. It's like, oh, just take out some of the American characters and go full British. Because often in my stories, I like to play on British folklore. I myself have played with Robin Hood, in Wallace Hood. Doing a Wallace and Gromit version of Robin Hood, although very short, like a 10-second little piece, 20-second piece. I haven't done a Sherlock Holmes one, haven't done anything relating to Alice in Wonderland, but I'm not a huge fan of Alice in Wonderland, but that's just me. Yeah, this stuff's interesting as well. He's talking about, I think he said it's society and how the world is like on two precipices. We go too far one way, it's like destruction of society. We go too far another way, and we kind of live on that edge. It's almost like the Goldilocks zone in the universe, not the universe, in the galaxy, of this little sweet spot where life can live. And obviously on our planet, we've got this, under the earth, you can't really live there in life because it's kind of got no sunlight, whatever. You've got this little thin layer of atmosphere that we live on as humans, this little Goldilocks zone. I don't know what was going with that, but whatever. Yeah, so just really beautiful stuff. I love the kind of almost chiaroscuro look here. You got the darks, obviously darker inks, really rich darker inks. Don't need hardly any detail there, and sort of real metal looking characters there. Lovely. I mean, I was even talking myself to a friend here in London about wouldn't it be fun if you had likes of a ring wraith that was good. I think I saw on another YouTube chat them talking about how one of the fellowship was a ring wraith, and they had this evil, seemingly utterly evil character, like this cloaked villain, and he's like a redeemed character, or redemptive in a sort of purgatorial kind of penitential way. This character who's finding redemption. That sort of story is kind of really interesting to me. It's kind of fun because it bridges the gap in almost like the dark and the light some extent. Obviously classic Tolkienian stuff here, the dragon on the gold. So there's all sorts of interesting pieces, obviously sketches. This is another great one. You see actually like this evil demonic character with a mask, and these kids being not good things going on. This kid's face does not look too too happy there. Obviously you got corruption, power, obviously money, all the rest of it. But he also, he's not just simple. Obviously this isn't another one of his characters, villainous character. I forget his name, Jim or something. He has a very simple name, this fat fella. That's just some of his art. You can see some of his insect stuff. He loves a bit of insect work. That's from his he did like a Dr. Livingston kind of story. I don't think it went anywhere. It was supposed to be a computer game or something. Let's have a look. I think I'm getting towards the end of it now. This is another one obviously he's playing on. You can see here the last one was like money. This is like, you can see communism, kind of the insectoid communism and end of, kind of, you got far capitalism and you got far left, far right, and they can team up and do damage, do such evil and stuff. That's just really interesting stuff from Rodney. Really great stuff, and obviously just some stuff to relax too. Stuff like this, you don't have to think too hard. Sort of just beautiful fantasy art. And as an artist myself, it's just you play with some spiritual stuff like this. Is super spiritual. You got Satan being cast into hell, St. Michael there, and obviously all the angels all up there. And but you can just play around with just different stuff. I mean, this is so John Carpenter, isn't it? Not John Carpenter. John Carter. John Carpenter's the director. Sort of stuff. So and this is one of his famous characters, is Elric the elf. So yeah, this is just a little casual chat. I don't normally do these sort of things, but I playing with ideas and such. I'll just read through here if there's anything else that's worth mentioning. Yeah, I think that's about it. He's got various little Kickstarters he's working on at the moment. I think he just released one a year or so ago. It was for an animation that he's sort of sent off to various film festivals, and it's been doing quite well. And good on him. I sent my animation off to a number of film festivals a while back, and you get some stuff, but a lot of it was during the pandemic, so it's hard to know where what the reaction is. It's nice to have being sitting with the audience and and see their reaction and see how you can develop your stuff moving forward. I think that's about it for today on Rodney Matthews. I just recently, about a few days ago, did a talk very similar to this one today on him, and we were talking about his kid's book Yendor. It's called Yendor, about a little boy who goes on an adventure and faces various monsters. And one of them was like, "Isn't Yendor Rodney spelled backwards?" And I was like, "Oh, I never thought of that," and that's interesting. I think Rodney's son is called Yendor as well. Again, a lot of everything I've said today is my opinion. I don't know everything. I could be wrong in various details, but just do your best. I'm new to this sort of format, so I'm playing with different ideas. Aside from that, that's about it. I think that's about it, really. I'm working on various little puppet mechanisms, which are really kind of fun. This is just not talking about Rodney Matthews for a few seconds. Got like a little character here, and I'm looking at working on ways of animating without taking so much time, because animation takes ages. If I could just find a way, here we go, of having characters move about, and it just doesn't take the amount of time that animation takes, because I'm getting a bit tired of, you make a puppet and then it takes like a week or so to make a thing. It'd be nice to just animate something really quick. Let's see another one I've looked and worked on at the moment. So this is, again, these are all sort of, some of these are falling apart a bit. So that's all magnets. It's a bit of fun. And you've got that mouth opens and closes. And you've got the eyebrows. Is the eyebrows working? Yeah, okay, to a degree. They're not working completely. So yeah, that's it from me for the moment. Yeah, check out Rodney Matthews, got some interesting stuff there. And maybe buy one of his art books or such. And hopefully I'll do a few more of these on different illustrators and artists that inspire me, and talk about different things. I mean, and another I think final thing I just mentioned, because I like to connect things and locations, is it's interesting that I think on Park Street, where the IRA bomb exploded and he had his big conversion, that it's sort of, he lives sort of halfway up the street, and at the top of the street is I think a church, or it's like Liverpool. Liverpool has like a sort of a bombed out church at the top of Bold Street, where this has like a church, and he's like halfway. He's like the halfway point, and it's going up towards the sky or God, and go down to like the river and like the Docklands and stuff. So I don't know, just interesting symbolism there. Also, what was I going to say? I can't remember. Yeah, no, that's all I could remember. Oh yes, he did some work in. He performed in the Liverpool Cavern, and obviously I have a background in Liverpool, so it was interesting to hear him back in his music days in the 1960s, 70s, and the Cavern Club. And obviously, there's another place. I forget the name. There's a pub now called the Rosamond Pike. I think it's a Wetherspoons pub, which he performed in London. It's just near Tottenham Court Road. Just around the corner from Soho Square, which is has a lot of history there. You've got Richard Williams, who did a lot of the anime. Obviously, he worked on one of the leading figures on Roger Rabbit, and that kind of spawned off a lot of the Disney Renaissance. He got a lot of the old Disney guard. Milk Call, and a lot of the old Ollie. Was it Ollie and Frank and Ollie and all the rest of it? They all kind of helped him on a lot of his commercial work. But then when he started Roger Rabbit, there's a new influx of animators, and a lot of those guys who worked on Roger Rabbit went on to work on the Disney Renaissance films, like Little Mermaid and Lion King and such going forward, the 2D stuff. Some of them moved on to 3D later on, but a lot of them sort of stayed in 2D. So that's interesting. It's interesting that Rodney himself was inspired a lot by Disney. In his own work, he mentioned the second Star to the Right. He quite was influenced by that music when he said when he was a kid. Yeah, this as far as I know. I mean, I've been researching stuff, so I can get stuff wrong, but And he performed actually at the Rosamund Pike pub, which is the Weatherspoons, just by there. And it's interesting that obviously Richard Williams started up the Roger Rabbit film just around the corner from there at his studio. They had another studio in Camden as well, where they had massive amounts of staff. But it's interesting how one thing leads to another. And also, obviously, with his painting, Be Watchful, how that where is it? Be Watchful. I was going to say relates to. Wow, this must be fun for you. Seeing all these images very quickly. Is that looks very like Blade Runner, and this came out in '83. Blade Runner came out when did Blade Runner come out? Blade Runner, 1982. Okay, fair enough. So that was probably inspired from Blade Runner, not the other way around. There's obviously a lot of Christian symbolism in Blade Runner as well. So with the hand and the knife thing for the hand, and the almost like the robots sort of start to have us build a soul. I kind of felt like that, but people have different opinions on Blade Runner, and it depends what cut you're talking about. Because it's like 5 cuts, and then there's 3 cuts of Blade Runner, but it's like how many cuts do you want? Which I, by the way, saw recently in London. It was really great on the IMAX screen watching Blade Runner. I never liked it, but on the IMAX it was amazing. So yeah, that's it probably from today. All the best. If you like this, it gives me incentive to make more and of these. And yeah, I might do more talks about various inspirations of mine in the future, and just sort of play around with the format of this sort of video making enterprise, whatever. Right. Bye.